my sister said. You'll never amount to anything, just like always. And everyone laughed loudly around the table. I didn't say a word, just left. The next day they found out I'm now. It's funny how a single sentence can ignite a fire you've been trying to suppress your entire life. My sister, Rachel, leaned back in her chair, wine glass in hand, and with a smirk that had aged like bad milk, spat the words like they were gospel. You'll never amount to anything, just like always. The room, full of laughter and clinking cutlery, exploded. Even my parents chuckled. My brother-in-law slapped the table. I didn't laugh. I didn't say a word. Just pushed my chair back slowly, my eyes meeting no one's, and left. No goodbyes. No dramatic rebuttal. Just silence, the same silence I'd learned to live in for years. Growing up, I was always the ghost at the family table. The quiet one. The daydreamer. Rachel, 5 years older, was the golden child. Cheer captain, valedictorian, married to an orthopedic surgeon before 30. She had a habit of speaking about me as if I weren't in the room, her voice soaked in sarcasm and pity. Oh, that's just Nate. He's still figuring things out. Or my favorite. He's into computers, I think? Delivered with a dismissive laugh. The truth? I had been working. For over a decade. Quietly. Brutally. I wasn't just into computers, I'd built a company from nothing. Spent nights coding until my eyes burned. Ate ramen in a freezing apartment, while my college friends bought condos. I faced rejection so many times it became a second language. But I told no one. It wasn't because I was humble. It was survival. In a family where vulnerability was mocked and dreams were only valid if they came with a paycheck, silence was protection. I remember the first family dinner where I didn't feel like an intruder was the day I stopped trying to be seen. Until that night. Until Rachel made her usual jab, and everyone else finally joined in. That was the moment I stopped being quiet out of survival, and started being silent out of choice. Because the next day, the silence broke. The next morning was unusually still. I poured my coffee like always, stared out the window at the city that had never once felt like home, and waited. At exactly 9 a.m., the embargo lifted. TechCrunch. Forbes. The Wall Street Journal. Notifications hit my phone like an avalanche. My face, the company name, Neural Thread, splashed across every business feed. AI startup Neural Thread acquired for $740 million by Kestrus Industries. Unknown founder quietly builds next-gen AI toolset, now Silicon Valley's golden child. Meet Nate Lawson, the nobody who just changed everything. Within minutes, my inbox bloomed with press requests, former classmates congratulating me like we were best friends, and a dozen VCs trying to throw their money at my next move. But it was the text that started it. Rachel. What is going on? Are these articles real? Mom. Nate, honey, why didn't you tell us about your company? Dad. Proud of you, son. Let's catch up soon. That one made me laugh. Catch up. As if we were ever close. As if they hadn't spent my childhood brushing aside my interests for Rachel's dance recitals or David's baseball trophies. I didn't reply. Not one word. I let the articles speak for me. Let them feel the shift. By noon, Rachel called. Then again at 12:07. Then 12:12. I turned my phone off. Because this wasn't the part they needed to see. The part they needed to see was coming next. The part one had prepared for, quietly, patiently, while they assumed I was just wasting space. This was the beginning of my answer. By day 2, my silence was making them nervous. Rachel sent a long email. It started with, "Hey little bro," and ended with, "We should do a family dinner soon." In the middle, she managed to pretend none of it ever happened, that the years of dismissiveness, the jabs, the humiliation weren't even footnotes. I forwarded it to a folder I'd named Noise. My parents were subtler. My mom posted a Facebook status congratulating me, tagging the whole family, as if they'd been my tireless support system. My dad made sure to text me. "Your sister is very proud of you. She told us she always believed in you." That was rich. But my brother-in-law, Derek? He was the one I had my eye on. Derek worked at a boutique investment firm, nothing groundbreaking, but enough to make him smug at parties. What he didn't know was that 2 weeks prior, during acquisition talks, I quietly bought a controlling stake in his firm's parent company. It hadn't even hit the internal emails yet. So when the board reshuffle happened 3 days later and his name was absent from the retained staff list, I knew he'd figure it out quickly. He called me, of course. I didn't answer. Rachel called next. Then texted. Rachel, what the hell did you do to Derek? He got fired today. They said it was a merger decision, but it's your company now, isn't it? No question mark could ever disguise panic. I stared at her message for a long time, then finally replied. Me. You told me I'd never amount to anything. I believed you. But turns out you were wrong. Then I blocked her. The unraveling had begun. And I wasn't even done yet. By the weekend, the energy had shifted completely. No more gloating. No more passive-aggressive digs from afar. Just silence, and desperation trying to dress itself as concern. They didn't know the half of it. For years, I'd been the silent safety net of the family. When Mom's roof leaked, I covered the contractor. When Dad's car broke down, I financed the repairs and the next one after that. Rachel's kids' school fees? Quietly covered. They never thanked me. Mostly, they didn't even ask. They just imply, suggest, assume. And I let them. But after that dinner, after Rachel's laugh rang in my ears like a final nail, I'd spent the night going through every line of my budget, every recurring transaction, every favor I'd given without acknowledgement. And I cut the strings. One by one. I watched as the emails started to roll in. From the school, due to a lapse in tuition payment. From the bank, your loan support on the BMW has been declined. From the contractor, unpaid invoice, threat of lien. Each line item felt like a bone snapping back into place. A realignment. They had fed off the image of my failure, then quietly fed off the fruits of my hidden success. And now they were learning what happens when you mistake silence for weakness. It wasn't revenge. It was math. They had taken, and now the account was closed. You don't always know when a moment becomes irreversible, but this one was. That dinner had changed the shape of my silence. No longer passive. No longer patient. It was focused now, surgical. It was the day after I cut all the financial ties that the first real consequences echoed through the family. Rachel called me 12 times before noon. Then switched tactics and had her husband email me, something about clearing up a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. The way they used that word, like the truth was some elastic thing they could stretch around their comfort. They didn't know what to do with someone like me now, someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. That night, I received an email from my father. Not a call. Not a message with any warmth. A businesslike email, as if I were a client or an employee. Nathan, your mother and I are disappointed in how you've handled this situation. Family is about grace and understanding. We know Rachel was out of line, but punishing everyone is not the answer. Grace. Understanding. The irony hit me like a slap. Where was the grace when I was 17, hunched over a cheap laptop in the basement, coding through power outages while Rachel hosted engagement parties upstairs? Where was the understanding when they mocked me for dropping out of college to work on a silly app that no one believed in? I replied with a single sentence. Respect is earned, not inherited. Then I locked my phone, turned off the lights, and let the silence do what it does best, reveal who people really are. The following Monday, I made one final move. I booked out the Four Seasons ballroom, yes, the big one. I planned a celebration. Not for my family. Not for press. But for the people who'd actually helped build Neural Thread. Developers. Engineers. My early testers. The coffee shop barista who let me sit for 8 hours without buying a second drink. The mentor who gave me a shot when I had no resume, just an idea. I even flew in a janitor from my first shared office space, who once brought me soup after I worked through a flu. The guest list was tight. Purposeful. Every name on it was someone who had believed in me without conditions. Not one family member made the cut. And when the photos went up online, and Rachel saw them, saw the champagne, the speeches, the thank yous that didn't include her or my parents, her text came in like clockwork. Rachel, why didn't you invite us? Are you seriously this petty? I didn't answer. Because when you're finally standing where no one believed you could be, you don't have to shout. You don't have to explain. The view speaks loud enough. A few days after the event, I got a call from my old neighbor, Mrs. Ellison. Sweet woman. Used to give me cookies as a kid when I'd come home from school with another bruised ego from Rachel's taunts, or my father's indifference. I saw the news, Nate, she said, her voice warm with pride. Your grandmother would have been so proud of you. That hit me harder than I expected. My grandmother. The one person in my family who had believed in me before anyone else. She wasn't blood, she was my mother's stepmother, technically, but she was the only one who ever showed me unconditional love. When she died, she left me a small property on the edge of town. A creaky, ivy-covered place with bad plumbing and a roof that leaked. I hadn't touched it in years. Until now. I bought the 2 houses on either side of hers. Renovated all 3. Turned the whole block into something beautiful, community spaces, a co-working loft, and in the center, a quiet library with a plaque that read, "In memory of the only one who believed in me." I invited Mrs. Ellison to the ribbon cutting. She cried. I did too. Rachel found out about it from a local news article. She showed up the next day, uninvited. Walked through the gate like she still had some unspoken claim to everything I ever touched. "This is nice," she said, her voice flat, eyes scanning the courtyard. "Grandma would have liked it." I nodded. She would have. She stood in silence for a beat, waiting for me to invite her in, maybe offer her coffee, a chair, a piece of the piece I'd built. I didn't. Eventually, she said, "You know, you could have just told us what you were building. And you could have just treated me like family," I said quietly. Her mouth opened, then closed again. I watched her walk back to her car. I didn't stop her. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing approval. I wasn't proving anything. I was just living. And that was more powerful than any speech or revenge. They say when the tide turns, you learn who swims and who sinks. For me, it wasn't about the tide, it was the quiet, inevitable shift in the ground beneath everything my family had stood on. A week after Rachel's awkward visit, my mother called. Her voice trembled like it did when I was 10 and brought home my first failing grade, trying to make sense of a child she never quite understood. "Nathan," she began, "I know things haven't been easy between us." I didn't speak. I let the silence draw the shape of her discomfort. We're proud of you. Your father and we didn't realize how serious you were about all of this." Serious. The word rang hollow. Like she was describing a hobby I'd finally taken too far. "You never asked?" I said. "That's not fair," she replied. "You always kept things to yourself." "Because when I spoke," I said slowly, "no one listened." I heard her exhale, like she was trying to hold the walls of her world together. "Can we have dinner? As a family? Just us. Talk things through." I almost said yes. Almost. But then I remembered every family gathering where I was invisible. Every holiday where my updates were an afterthought, wedged between Rachel's promotions and David's new car. I remembered sitting in my old bedroom with the door cracked open, hearing them laugh about me. I remembered Rachel saying, "He's harmless. Like a goldfish." So I said, "I think I'll pass." There was a long pause. "You're really not going to give us a chance?" "You had 30 years," I said. "I needed a family. You needed someone who wouldn't make you uncomfortable." She started to say something else, but I hung up. Not out of spite. Out of peace. Because I was done bending myself into shapes that made other people comfortable. The next day, I visited the co-working loft we'd built next to my grandmother's house. It was already alive, designers, developers, young people with bright ideas and chipped laptops who reminded me of a version of myself I hadn't seen in a long time. I sponsored scholarships, mentorship programs, gave away the same chance no one had given me. That night, I sat on the library steps under string lights and fading sun, a journal in my lap. Not a tablet. Not a laptop. Just paper and ink. Like how I started. And I wrote something I hadn't said aloud in years. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your light. I wasn't rich because I sold a company. I was free because I stopped waiting for permission to be myself. It started with a knock on the door of the library. A slow, unsure kind of knock. The kind that says, "I don't know if I'm welcome here." I looked up from the donation ledger I'd been reviewing and already knew who it was. Rachel. She stood there in a gray wool coat, arms crossed tight, not because of the cold, but because she didn't know what else to do with them. Her eyes scanned the warm glow of the space behind me, where two college students were debating startup valuations near the coffee machine. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded, motioned her in, not out of invitation, but curiosity. I wanted to see what she'd do now that the roles were reversed. She walked in slow, like a stranger in a museum of her own family's ruins. Her gaze lingered on the photographs on the wall, smiling faces, none of them ours. Kids with big dreams, mentors, friends. Real family. Rachel sat in one of the chairs near the window and looked at me, trying to find an entry point. "I didn't come here to fight." I raised an eyebrow. "That's new." She smirked, the smallest crack in the mask. Then she looked down at her hands. "You always scared me a little, you know." That caught me off guard. She continued, softer now. "You were quiet, but not because you didn't have things to say. It was like you saw through all of us. And that made it hard to be around you." "You never played along." "I didn't speak. Not yet." She sighed. "I thought making fun of you made it easier. Made me feel more in control. I was wrong." I leaned back in my chair, letting her words settle. I didn't need her to grovel. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth, and for the first time, she was giving it. "After Derek lost his job, things got hard," she admitted. "We had to sell the house. The private school, gone. Dad won't answer my calls unless it's about Mom." Still, I said nothing. I had no intention of making her pain my responsibility. I just listened. Rachel's voice dropped lower. "You stopped paying for everything. And it all unraveled so fast. It made me realize how much you were holding up, and we never even saw it. Or maybe we did. And we just chose not to care." Finally, I looked her in the eyes. "So why now?" She blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean? Why tell me all this now? Because you mean it, or because you hope I'll fix things again?" She looked down again. "I don't know. Maybe both." That, at least, was honest. "I'm not the family ATM," I said. "I'm not the quiet kid at the table anymore. And I'm definitely not the one who needs your approval." She nodded, slowly. "I know that now." We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the streetlights buzzed on. "I don't hate you," I said. "But I'm not coming back. Whatever idea you had of me, the one you laughed at for all those years, that person never existed. And I don't owe the real version of me to people who only show up after the glow-up." Rachel bit her lip. "Is there a way back from this? For us?" I thought for a moment. "There's a path forward," I said, "but it doesn't lead back." She nodded. And for once, didn't argue. She stood, adjusted her coat, and glanced at the books lining the library wall. "You really built all this," she said. "And you did it without us." "No," I said. "I did it because of you." And that was the truth. She left without another word. I didn't watch her go. I turned back to my work, surrounded by people who chose me, and the future I had built with hands no one believed were capable. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the forgotten one. I was the one they never saw coming. The days after Rachel's visit were strangely quiet. Not the absence of noise kind of quiet, but the full-bellied, contented kind. Like when a storm finally breaks and all that's left is clean air and the hush of a world starting over. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for another shoe to drop. And yet, one afternoon as I sat in the library alone, watching the light fall across the old hardwood floors, I found myself pulling out a blank sheet of paper and writing a letter I never intended to send. It began, "Dear Mom, you once said I was difficult to understand. That I was too quiet, too distant, too different. I used to think you were right. That maybe if I just tried harder, talked more, smiled on command, kept pace with Rachel, I'd earn a place at your table. But I wasn't different. I was just me. And you didn't want that. You wanted the version of me who didn't exist. The safe one. The forgettable one. Well, here I am. Loud in silence. Unapologetic in success. And for the first time, free." I paused there. Folded the letter. Didn't finish it. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I walked out onto the balcony above the courtyard. Below, the small community I built, students, creatives, dreamers, was alive. Not because of me, but because I'd given them space to believe in themselves, the way no one had ever given to me. That was the real victory. Not the company sale. Not the headlines. This. Watching a shy girl present her first app to a circle of strangers who clapped like she just cured cancer. Seeing two ex-con fathers build a podcast from our recording room and start turning their pain into purpose. Witnessing quiet kids become loud with confidence. I didn't need my family's recognition anymore. Because I'd created a new family. One that didn't measure worth in resumes or real estate. One that didn't laugh when someone dared to dream. Later that evening, I visited the little memorial I'd placed at the edge of the garden. Just a wooden bench under a cherry tree. A brass plate that read, "For the quiet ones. We see you." And I sat there, alone but not lonely, remembering every moment I'd been overlooked, dismissed, doubted. Letting them all burn away in the calm. Not out of anger. But because I was ready for the next chapter. Not as the boy they never believed in. But as the man they'd never get the chance to know. It's been 6 months now. Sometimes Rachel still tries to reach out, text messages that swing between nostalgia and guilt. My parents sent a holiday card this year. First one with my name on it in a decade. I didn't reply. Not because I'm angry. I'm not. I just finally understand that peace isn't about fixing what broke. It's about building something new in its place. I walk through the library every morning, coffee in hand, nodding to familiar faces who've become family by choice. People who don't need me to be anything more than who I already am. There's a strange kind of power in quiet success. Not the kind that seeks applause, but the kind that changes the world one quiet decision at a time. So if you're where I was, overlooked, underestimated, unheard, just know this. You don't have to prove them wrong. Just prove yourself right. And let the rest echo in the silence.